This Monday night, we're sending you back to the podcast.
Oh, jeez. Hey.
Recorder on this computer. All right, you're on camera.
Yes, we don't want to take too much of your time. You know, you're busy.
I have time.
Okay.
It's not a crazy day. It's not a crazy day, and it's Friday evening, so I'm like, let's party. Let's talk movies.
Did you go ahead and introduce Alison?
So this is Alison Locke. She directed The Apology, starring Anna Gunn, and it's incredible. I just watched it. We don't. My brother lives in Vegas, by the way, so we didn't get to watch it together, but he watched it as well. And it's amazing. I'll start. How did this, first of all, it was hard I was emotional because, as you know, I have a daughter. We both have a daughter. And so, oh my gosh, like Anna Gunn killed it. I was like feeling everything she was feeling, and imagining 20 years of not knowing what happened to my daughter is just wild. And also the way you wrote it felt like a play. It was beautiful, and like how you were able to just elevate these scenes with their conversations. How did the concept start? How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And just to tell folks too, if they haven't seen the film, because we are a little indie, so a lot of folks don't even know what The Apology is about. It's a Christmas set psychological thriller. It's about a mother named Darlene who has been looking for her missing daughter, like you said, for 20 years to no avail. She's just on the edge of despair when she gets a knock on her door in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve. It's her ex-brother-in-law and former flame, Jack, who's come in claiming an accident, and pretty soon explains that he's actually there on purpose to tell her something very important. So it's a chamber piece, kind of psychological thriller. It has horror elements. It's funny because it's on Shudder, but I think it's a little. I'm a big horror fan. That's like mostly what I do, but it is a little bit more on the thriller drama side of things. But the idea of it came from that. I had a dream about that knock on the door and a man on the other side saying, "I know what happened to your daughter." And you know, as we've talked, Linda, we both have daughters, and motherhood has been so important to, I know, both of our work. And so it just became, as I was working on it, kind of this metaphor for what the experience has been like of being there for my daughter who has special needs. She's autistic, and just the incredible diligence and like the way that sort of thing can take over your life and sort of become obsessive.
Yeah.
And still never quite feel satisfying. Like you're trying your best, but there's always more you feel like your kiddo could need. And so that's kind of where it came from. Yeah. Nice light fare. That's why I laughed when you were like, I was tearing up. I'm like, yeah.
I saw your article where you said you had the dream of it. And I didn't know that was a cliche, because me and my sister always email each other. We have a really good dream. We'll email each other and like, oh, this would be a great movie. And like, and then I read that little bit of your article. I was like, oh, it's a cliche.
It's like one of those, you know, it's something that when I was in film school, I had a teacher who taught me a little bit about that, the idea of like harnessing your dreams for your stories. And it's so it's been very helpful to me, especially with this one.
Yeah, actually, Stephen King, I think, writes a lot of his dreams too, I believe, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. And on writing, I think he was. Yes.
I have a lot of vivid dreams. I can't say lucid because I believe lucid's when you control your dreams, right? Yeah. And you have some control, right? So, yeah. I don't have much control in my dreams, but they're so vivid that I remember them every day. They like kind of live in me. And I've been meaning to, like, I always say I'm going to keep a dream journal because I think for that reason it would be great source material as well. But I think that's amazing. You know, I think the way it felt like a play was really cool too. I mean, what was that like, having these conversations, and like as a writer, like what were you asking in each, or what was the challenge of asking like each person's motivation, how to, you know, just writing that process of those dialogues and creating those scenes and the progression, you know.
Yeah, it was you know, a big part of my motivation for it was thinking about a revenge story in a way that is something more that I would relate to. I love revenge stories in general, and I love them when they get bloody and crazy too. Like I love all kinds, but for me, it was more interesting to see like what would happen because it's such an extreme situation that would never happen, right? You would never have access to each other in this kind of scenario the way that they do.
It's true.
And so I was like, well, what would happen if you really didn't have anything else getting in the way? If it was just the two of them kind of going at each other and plunging and trying to figure out what they needed from each other. And I just kept thinking too that I really wanted it to have a lot of compassion, that even though this guy has done the worst thing possible and is obviously a massively unhealthy and destructive individual, but just the idea that even within that we would try to understand where they were both coming from. And so it was always like trying to ground it in that way. And I had some fun here and there with sort of like thriller horror tropes that were like scattered through, a little Hitchcockian nods and things like that. Although it's funny, I'm not as big of a Hitchcock fan. I'm more of a Brian De Palma fan who was like a Hitchcock worshiper. And so it's basically being the same thing, I guess. It's like diluted, but yeah. So that's where that came.
I'm a big George Lucas fan, and he borrowed from like Kurosawa and other directors as well, and so I borrowed from him, and then it's a good thing. Like I feel like I've heard some filmmakers say they just do their own thing and they don't learn other cinema, but I think it's kind of important also, to see what has been done in the past, what works and what you want to evolve. But I have to say, Alison, it was shot so beautifully, like the lighting, the colors. Like, how did you choose the color palette? What was that like? How fun was that, choosing the color palette? And did you know that already?
It was so fun. I'm a very heavy prep, lots of notes nerd. And so, yeah, I definitely had the color palette in mind. I really wanted Christmas colors and primary colors because these sorts of movies are usually very sort of brown and gray and sort of, miserable looking. And I thought, well, it's already miserable enough what they're going through. I wanted to see play with the idea that the color was sort of representing what she was going through in this transformation, what she was experiencing. And so I laid those basics down to my production designer, Tom Obed, who is just the best, and our art department, and they really ran with it and did. And we also talked about this is a space where a woman has lived alone for, however long it's been since the divorce, something like 18 years or something. What would a woman's house look like if she was kind of in between sort of a time capsule thing and trying to make it her own? So we had a lot of fun with that. And our DP, Jack Caswell, is just this brilliant, calm, giant guy. And he just kept elevating everything. And our crew were just so great. It was such a dream come true to work from, I'm used to the DIY space where it's kind of like with your short, Yananton. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yananton, yeah.
I love it so much. And I also love not only what you're doing with it, but also just the fact that whenever somebody just goes, especially a mom, I have to say, just goes, I'm going to put a camera out and bring my little phone camera out or whatever and just make it. So I'm from that space of doing that. So to go from that to having 100 people working on the film, I mean, it was the cliche thing of I don't even know what everybody's doing. I was learning. I'm what is a DIT? I didn't understand. And so, it was
this is so cool. This is so amazing.
Wonderful learning experience,
Was it that shot with the stained glass and then the door and you could see the Christmas lights through the stained? Oh my God, that was so beautiful. And you're right. Just the juxtaposition of sadness and this happy, setting as well, or lights and colors. There was one scene where when she's alone in her room, she feels a little big in that room, and it felt like the space was small. Was that intentional? What was your thought process behind that?
I really liked the idea of it being a bit theatrical, because again, the idea of the film is so extreme. Again, that's something. So then I was let's treat it a bit like a dark fairy tale. And so there were moments in the film where we were let's really lean into that. And so that was one of them, was basically there is no fourth wall. We didn't build one. It was an attic bedroom. So we just leaned into it because I really wanted a lot of lonely space, negative space. And I really wanted to talk about stealing from the greats. I wanted to steal from The Night of the Hunter. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, guys, but it's a It's a fantastic.
No, but I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's a fantastic noir from 1950 something, I think, way ahead of its time. But it had this incredible bedroom that's very famous for having these like sharp edge, like kind of peaks and stuff in it, and yeah. So
it was so cool visually.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
I felt like visually it just flowed so well and gelled so well, and it was like, you know, it's like music. It just, with everything that was going on, it was beautiful. You were talking about you know, getting into the characters and the character stuff, but what was, and you know, thinking about what each of their motivations were, what was it like getting into was it Jake? I'm sorry,
Jack. Yeah,
Jack. What was it like? What was it like getting into Jack's head and like having to have, in a way, empathize with him? I thought that was great. It was really well done. It kind of made him more more realistic, you know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really wild because it became kind of more my obsession than understanding Darlene, because I feel like so much of Darlene is me, even though I've never, you know, my child's never been missing. I've never struggled with alcohol. But I think, again, like the things that I was mentioning, there's just a lot that's me in that character. And so after a certain point, it was kind of like, well, I know about her. He was the big mystery to me. And it felt almost like a fun personal challenge to try to understand how somebody could do that.
Yeah.
Because and how somebody could live with it for the years after. You know, that was the thing that was more interesting almost, in a way, than the horrific act itself. It was the continued lies and the living with it. And so Linus Roach, who played Jack, and I had a bunch of really fantastic conversations talking about how do you justify that to yourself, and that he was living with all of these justifications. And you know, I think most people have encountered some severe narcissists in their lives, and you know, they're learning now that they think that there's like a large percentage of the population that are high functioning sociopaths. And
I know, yeah.
And so I thought that was very interesting. I didn't learn that until quite long in, we were already prepping the film when I learned that detail, but I thought that was really interesting. The idea, it's like, oh, people could be walking around with this way of looking at the world. You know,
it was so fascinating to me. I really loved seeing him portrayed that way. As odd as that sounds, because he's, you know, a bad person. Well, he made a bad choice. He made a bad choice.
He did a lot of bad things, and so it's like it's funny because my editor Lana Wolverton and I, who's like this brilliant, you'd love her, this like brilliant lady, and she's like so casual about it. So she and I would be having conversations about him, and we'd be like, well, obviously because what he did was a piece of shit, but like, let's go through that and actually think about this as like a human thing. And it was just funny because we kept feeling like we had to constantly justify in the conversation with each other. Yeah. It's like, this is our film. We knew this going in, and yet we still were like, felt sort of guilty a bit with our fascination with it. And that was always the debate throughout the whole process, was like, how much do we give him versus her? How do we keep that balance fair? Because it was almost like, it's so obvious that he's like, you know, the bad guy or whatever. Right. You know, hey, I just like, whenever you're writing anything, you have to care for everybody that you're writing. And so even this guy, I've always felt weirdly defensive of, which is
totally get it. I totally get it. I mean, they become your characters, you know. I think that's the best writing to me, even when I'm reading a novel.
You went mute.
And actually, it's done great in Game of Thrones too, right? He you know, George R. Martin does that as well. You see these villains, and then you empathize with them. You can't help it, you know, and because they're 3-dimensional. And if you're in that headspace, and if you're, you know, you were writing for him, so that is, you know, you can't help but feel something. And I was taking that journey and really seeing a visceral person that even I was like, wow, he's playing this so well. Like, this character is like so interesting.
He's so fantastic. And I really wanted somebody that had a lot of warmth and charm to him. And Linus just inherently is like, he's just one of the nicest human beings on the planet. And so it's like, it was, you know, he's such a gifted actor, even when he plays really tough guys, that humanity shines through, that he this warmth that he has. And so you can then understand even more because I wanted to be very respectful to Darlene. Like I wanted her to be a very smart person. And so we had to give some like hints as to how she missed this, like how could she, because I think that's always the thing, like women who are abused or taken advantage of, so often the like emphasis becomes, how did you miss it? And why didn't you leave? Or things like that. And it's like,
oh my gosh, you're so right. It's so true. It's so true.
They're skilled manipulators. Like, let's put the emphasis in the right place here. But and by the way, if I may fangirl out a bit, I have my smile mug here in your honor, Josh, because I know this was one of your favorite movies of last year.
It was.
That episode.
Yeah, that was great.
So I thought you would appreciate it. Yeah. I always want to know what everyone's favorites are. I'm like, what do you guys like? I was like, shoot, I gotta still watch Prey. I fell asleep. It wasn't Prey's fault. It was like one of those moments. Like, I was just like, I cannot. Yeah.
I like.
I was gonna say I'll let Josh ask some questions too.
Well, I like to learn. I love hearing more about like behind the scenes and making the pizza. When you wrote the script, did you have to shop it around? Like, how was that? How was the process?
Yeah, speaking of fairy tales, it was like that in a way, because I had written the script and I'd done a whole bunch of rewrites. I'd done readings with friends. I'd been like trying to figure out what to do with it. And I was like, I'm just going to start talking to my friends about it who make things, and we'll just see. And so I went to visit my friend. When I was going to visit my friend, Stacey Jorgensen, who became a producer on the movie, I was like, hey, she was working at Company X, excuse me. And and I said, I have this script. Could you just read it and tell me if you know somebody who would want to read it? And she called me back in a day and said, I want to produce it. And I'm going to bring it to my company, and we'll see if they say yes. But if they don't, we will find a different home. And then they said yes, and it was insane. And it all happened like Thanksgiving, like Halloween through Christmas with this process. And then it was quite a lot of work to package it, to find, to find out all the casting and the crew and everything else. But we started proper prep a year ago, like last January. And so then the film was finished by the fall. And so then the company that were our financiers are also the distributor, RLJE Films. And so they were like, well, it's a Christmas film. We're going to put it out at Christmas. So they put it out in theaters, and it's on VOD and Shudder and AMC Plus, and it was insane. So that's kind of how that happened. Yeah.
I was curious about, because the casting. So you get Anna Gunn, and I love Janine Garofalo.
As you should.
So it's cool to see her. I haven't seen her in a long time. How did that happen? Like, who was your casting? Like, were you there watching them, or did you say, no, you got the part? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, with actors like that, you send offers. So basically, we send the producers put together offers for them, and I wrote a cover letter that was basically like, here's who I am, because you don't know who I am. My IMDb is skeletal. And this is why I think you would be right for the part of what my sort of ideas for the film are, my vision for the film. And so Anna and Linus both, we did a Zoom, and right away it was like, we're off to the races. Like, we just got it. And so that's how that happened. And then with Janine, on that cover letter for everybody, I had written my phone number and my email. I was like, just in case they feel shy about reps or something, I don't know. And also just to kind of be like, I'm opening myself up. Here's all my feelings about this, and also here's my contact information. And Janine called me on a Friday night, just out of the blue, and said, I haven't even finished the script, but I want to do it. And no, she didn't even say that. She was just like, okay, so Alison, this is Janine Garofalo. And of course I'm like, don't scream. And then she's like, okay, so I can't do these certain dates. So if you need to rescind your offer based on that, I totally understand. And I was like, does that mean you're saying yes? So she's just like a very supportive, like grounded person, like very indie film in that way. Just immediately was like looking out for me and just kept doing that. It was really very kind. There was one rough day on set, and she was really just came over and was like, what is it, baby? Like, she was just like so lovely to me. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, it was it was a very moving experience. I mean, I cried through the whole process, like all the time. Did you journal? A little bit, but not as much as I wished, because I was literally so busy. It would be like, I'd be looking at it going, I need to write things, and I would be like, nope.
Totally. When I used to work I think you know that I used to work for Robert Rodriguez. I would help him with his journals by like documenting. I mean, he would, do the full thing, but I would document things that happened in conversations that I thought were cool with actors. So,
man, I'm gonna
because
do
it's
that
hard.
next time.
You directors have so much going on. There's like, and you're constantly thinking and like making decisions.
Yeah, it was so, it's overwhelming to make your first feature anyway, and then coming from home with my daughter for so long and then making it was like, I was so grateful, I was so overwhelmed. It was such intense material. It was, a very short shoot. We shot for 16 days, and so that's pretty brutal, so it was like, well, and I'm a crier anyway, and especially a crier on set. Like Stacy would always joke, like we did, because we used to make shorts together. That's how we knew each other. And we also both went to USC. And she would say, "Oh, I don't know if we've got the scene yet. Allie hasn't cried yet."
What a beautiful experience, though.
Yeah, it was very cool.
I love that you incorporated the friendship and the female support in the story. Like, I just feel like in real life, how important that is too, what was it on purpose? Was that you wanted her to have this female, like,
well, I wanted her to
Janine
feel, I mean, it's like, and then to get Janine and Anna to play those parts was like, so great. But it was it's a personal mission for me to put more girlfriends in films. Like, it's a big thing for me. And I think friendship in general, I mean, I love great movies about male friendship too. I'm just coming at it from more my own personal experience.
Right.
Because I think very often, like, the true, like, loves of your life aren't always romantic. They are often like your BFF, your ride or die. And so, so that's kind of where that came from. And I really liked the idea of, like, Darlene starting at night, not quite realizing all of what she already has, thinking about the things that she wished she had. I think we all kind of lay victim to that, can be guilty of that at times. And so I wanted her to begin and end with, like, here is the, like, true love of your life. It's not a romantic love for her, but it's this is your person. You are loved, you are backed. Like, you have that in you, just like she has a voice, just like she has all of this ability that she didn't credit herself with, which is the same thing that I had felt. And so coming out of making it, I just felt a lot more like empowered. And even though I'm
wearing my "We Can Do It" shirt with
nice. Oh, nice.
Girosa from Mad Max.
Yes, no, of course. I have, if you go on my Instagram, like deep into my Instagram, I have a painting or a picture that my friend made, which is of me as Furiosa with my daughter when she was little, which you'll probably really dig. And and then my daughter and my husband is Batman and Robin. So
amazing.
Yeah, I have their shirt too. Yeah. I was like, I have all these. I'm going to this is really nerdy, but I'm going to this, like, 80s party in like a week or two. And so I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll get a t-shirt made of all my favorite 80s female directors.
Amazing.
So I've got Bigelow and Campion and Coolidge and Heckerling. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
But I had to show off our nerdery. What do you got, Josh? You got any nerdery on your sweatshirt? I can't tell.
It's Doctor Strange.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Oh, cool.
I love Doctor Strange.
With a hoodie too.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what's the full effect? Let's see the full effect.
This is about.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
That's delightful.
Alison, what are the...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, we wanted to ask, what was the movies that inspired you when you were younger to become a filmmaker?
Oh yeah. It's a long list, of course, I think, for everybody, right? I think The Goonies was one of the first ones where I started to really understand what movies even were and that sort of thing. But I think the one that and obviously Heckerling, Fast Times at Ridgemont High is one of my all-time favorites, and it really got me excited about it's funny, everybody talks about Spicoli. I love Spicoli, but it was the ensemble nature of it. Like, that was so interesting to me, like the idea of, like, oh, you're going to tell a story with that many characters, and like that losing her virginity scene. I don't know if you guys have seen it recently and are not obsessive like me about this movie, but it was like it was done in this way that was, like, not glamorous, but it wasn't like victimized. It was just this very ordinary thing. There was just certain things about that movie that just still really stick to me. And then Taxi Driver was a big one too. Like when I was thinking about that hallway scene where he's on the phone trying to convince Sybil Shepherd, like, I'm not that crazy. I'm sorry I took you to a porn for our first date, but I'm not that crazy. And the camera's just like embarrassed for him and like pans away. And I was like, I want to direct movies. I was like, that's so smart.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So it was like when you fall in love with anything, there's like usually that moment where you're like, you can kind of pinpoint it. Like I can pinpoint the moment I fell in love with my husband. And I can pinpoint the moment I fell in love with directing. But yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of movies like Gas Food Lodging was another big one. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. It's Allison Anders, who is you gotta see it. Glenda especially, I think, will love that. And Night of the Living Dead, because again, I'm a huge horror person, so a lot of horror films but I didn't get into them as much until I was older. But
me too.
That's funny because usually the hardcore horror folks are like, junior high on. Like I was, like
I think I just didn't know. I don't know if you feel that way. I feel like I just didn't realize how much I like them. It actually was because I was working for Robert, and obviously he's a genre director. And when I was living in Austin, there was all these genre screenings, and I started learning more, and I was like, oh shoot, I knew that I loved it, and I had seen horror and I enjoyed it. I didn't realize I was a fan, and then until I kept watching more and more, and I was like, oh shoot, I'm really a horror fan. Like I just saw, did you see Violent Night?
Yeah, that was super fun. I actually did a podcast where we talked Maximum Film, which is one of my favorites. They did we did one where we talked about Violent Night.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
It's just I think I started reading the House on Haunting Hill. I feel like I'm always saying things wrong, but Guillermo del Toro is I couldn't believe that Guillermo del Toro is the the senior editor for Penguin Horror. And when he was describing, I had no idea. And so I'm just, my brother was even saying, how does he have the time?
I literally was thinking, I'm tired for him. Like, I'm just
tired. And he does the intro for the book. I just started reading it because I don't read much horror. I realized, well, how come I don't read much? I've read Stephen King, but, I should expand and read more. And he talked about how he quoted, and I forget who he quoted, but the reason why they love horror, or the beauty of horror, is one, to have conversations about stuff like anxiety, pain, loss, it's to have those conversations. And also, like, it's better to feel than not to feel. And I think that's very true. I've been depressed before. It was circumstantial. Sure. I don't think that I deal with it, but I remember specifically, I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't even watch a movie and enjoy it. I was just laying in bed. I've never felt that one in my life. And it was after a miscarriage, actually. So might have been like the high hormones, and then suddenly dropped, and the whole experience.
I've had one as well. It's a unique kind of grief. Yeah.
It's crazy. And at the time, and I don't know if it's the same for you, not many people were talking about it. So I just didn't, I guess I didn't see it coming, and I should have. I know, but in any case, what he said is right. It is good to feel and like take a journey. And I remember when I started watching horror, I was like, I think what I like too is I'm just going on this journey, and I'm feeling these things, and I'm crying, I'm scared, and I don't know, there's a part of me that just enjoys having these journeys. And also there's beauty in pain, like seeing, like you could see, like in zombie shows, or in your film with Anna, you can see how much love a mother has for their child, and that pain, and there's actually beauty in that love, I think, which may sound weird, but it's like you just see how much love a person has. And like I watched Walking Dead all the way through the end, and I don't know if you did too, because I know you like horror. But
I didn't. I did fall off at a certain point. I was a fan for a long time,
and that's okay. I know, well, but it was one of those things where I just felt like you can see, just the beauty of in this apocalyptic world, that you're trusting strangers, you're building a family, you're fighting for the people that you love. There's actually so much beauty in it too. So anyway, I don't know, what draws you to horror? Like what you said you discovered it later. How did that happen? And
I relate to everything you're saying. I mean, I think that's I love, like, I just finally saw The Conjuring 2 last night. I had not seen it. And I just was like, because I'm writing a haunted house thing, and I was like, let me see some more and kind of think it through. And I love just a classic scare too, and that movie has a lot more going on than just that. Of course, I'm not trying to denigrate. I loved it, but it's I love just at that level, that kind of fun level of it. But I also just feels like a safe space you can go to whatever dark place you need to go to. Anything that you need to explore or want to explore, you can do it in that genre. And the audience will be there for that. There's a lot less like, don't go that far, whereas when I would write straight dramas, it would be like, this is too dark, like, and so a lot of what happened was, like, I watched this documentary, and this was years ago now, but it was called The American Nightmare, and if you like horror movies, I highly recommend it. It's
write that down.
It's from probably, when have it been, like 15 or 20 years ago, excuse me, and it's all about mostly American plus Cronenberg horror filmmakers from the 60s and 70s. And it's talking about how those movies, these great horror movies, were also about these big sort of social issues that we were all dealing with, and that we continue to deal with, like sexism and the sexual revolution and Vietnam and racism and all kinds of things like this. And so that just kind of blew my mind. I had not really, even though I loved Night of the Living Dead, I had seen a bunch of these movies that, obviously had a lot of these great layers to them. I hadn't really thought, I can take my drive to put these kind of bigger issues and personal obsessions or whatever into this setting. And so it just kind of like, it just blew my mind, and I just kind of went from there. So yeah, I just love it. I love every kind. I just love the more specific and weird you can get. Like, I loved did you guys see A Wounded Fawn? That just came out last month, but it's on Shudder as well. And now I'm kind of obsessed with Travis Stevens. He did Jacob's Wife, which is another great one. And I just the idea of, like, you can do anything from, like, his stuff where it's like, it's kind of giallo and strange and sort of body horror a little bit, nightmarish, to something like The Conjuring, where it's like, this is a very classic sort of Shirley Jackson haunted house thing. Yeah. But it's loaded with all of these big issues of, that we all facing your fears, seeing love through the years, like all these it's great stuff. But yeah.
What's it like getting on that headspace when you're writing? Because I feel like because I've never written anything scary. I've only done like sci-fi and drama, but you get so emotionally invested. Do you ever get scared writing?
Yes.
Or like
that's the thing. I'm a big wimp. I get scared a lot when I watch horror movies. I get scared when I read horror stuff. I get scared when I write my own stuff, especially because I write such personal stuff. So I will literally use the layout of my house as the geography in my head of what I'm writing. And so then I'll be like spooking myself, especially like right now. I'm like, I feel like I'm constantly seeing something behind me and stuff. And it's just like, I'm such a wimp, but it's kind of, I feel like it's your duty as an artist, as a writer, especially like you're trying to contend with the human condition to help other people contend with the human condition. Right. And so your part of your duty is to a little bit put yourself through it, so that they can do it in a safe way for them. And so sometimes it would be really hard. It would be like, oh my God, I can't keep writing about this woman and her daughter. Like, what, this is like my worst fear. And here, I was living in it for years of writing this story. And so, yeah, but it also feels like I say, sort of a duty.
Do you outline when you write?
Yeah, I'm learning more and more that I should outline more thoroughly. Like they taught
everyone's process is different.
Because it's almost like I'll start outlining and then I'll lose patience and I'll just want to get to pages.
Right.
And then as I start doing pages, then I'll put it on cards, and I have a giant cork board and I'll put it on, each card.
Right.
And then I'll start doing the character bios. I always write full character bios for every character, no matter how small. And then I'll go back through, and usually I'll have to do an actual proper outline after I've done a certain amount of pages, or a full draft sometimes, or mini drafts. Like I'm re-breaking the haunted house thing now. It's like it's just sort of like whatever you need. But yeah, it just depends on how patient I can feel at the beginning about wanting to get into pages. But the big thing I always say to other writer friends is like, rewrite. Just accept that rewriting is writing. It's so cliche, but it's very true. That's where you get to the good stuff. The painful part is that first draft or two. Right. And then after that, it's still painful, but it's less painful. It's more fun because you've got your clay and you can actually really build something.
Yes, and chisel it away, right?
Yeah. So,
I was going to ask about the rewriting process and how that is for you, and how many rewrites do you usually go through? Or is it different for every
It's
script?
different for everything, but I do tend to be like, let me rewrite forever. And my issue is like learning to be like, okay, it's fine. Just show it to people. And it's not so much shyness. It's like, I'm really not a shy person in general, but it's more just like, I can't stop wanting to work on things, which I think is something that all artists struggle with. But yeah. And then with this one, it was like, I rewrote it so many times before development, through development with the actors. I rewrote even until the day before we finished shooting. So it was a lot of rewriting.
Well, I've always heard writing is rewriting. I think I was taught that in film school. Writing is rewriting. And you're right, it is the best part. Josh, did you have
I was just watching the podcast for your Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And you hear this all the time. I don't know if you ever seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I have,
but there's Mac. This is probably the same thing with music and in movies. You don't finish a project, you abandon it.
Yes.
And he talks about you just got to put it out. You got to give yourself a deadline, put it out there, share with your friends. And if they have some critiques for you, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just like, that's how things evolve and whatnot. But you got to keep going forward. You can't be scared and just like,
Yeah.
Exactly. Just got to abandon it and move on.
Yeah, exactly. And so even like with the film out, I'm still like,
yeah, I'm sure
I would have done this.
It was beautiful. I also loved how you matched the weather to the feelings and the situation and the storm, along with the snow. How did you do that opening shot? What did you guys use?
Yeah, we used a drone, and it was, thank you. It was a drone, and it was in Wisconsin. So we did one day of Wisconsin exteriors, but the weather did not cooperate, and so they had to do an additional day where it was a remote direction. I couldn't even direct that shot. My producer Kim Sherman had to direct it because I was directing scene work at the same time because the weather hadn't cooperated with us. But it became a whole thing because we shot the film almost entirely in Los Angeles. And so we don't have any snow here. So we had a whole VFX team. We had the drone shots. We had another team who went out and did some sort of B-roll shots where we get all that lovely lakes inserts and things like that we did. That was that team. And then we had a big VFX team that helped us so much with that. And our sound design team, Julie Diaz at Unbridled Sound, she was our sound designer, and we had a huge, again, an actual sound team, amazing, to fill that in because I really wanted, like you say, the weather to reflect her emotions, his emotions, this broiling situation. I wanted the storm to just get worse and worse and worse until the classic quiet of the morning. After
it was incredible. It was beautiful, and that opening was so beautiful. And I love the slow pace of like, getting us there and like finding out what's the reveal, what's going to happen. So I've said on my other podcast, I don't know if you know, but I don't watch trailers. I actually don't read breakdowns. I like to just go in and not know what's going to, I'm weird like that.
No. I think there's like a drive now to try to be like more pure about things, right? Like, because our attention is so diverted. I totally get that. Most of the time I don't either. And I'm
really,
just like, because I just feel like if it's something that somebody's recommended or it looks like it's my jam, that's enough.
Yes, that's what I do too. Because people ask me, how do you do it? I'm like, well, exactly that. If someone recommends it, you read a title online, a director you like, a theme. My husband makes trailers, so it's funny. I'm like sleeping with the enemy.
Don't even watch his work.
You know what I do love is I love to immediately watch the trailer after I watch the film.
I do that.
I love seeing how they diluted it. It's fascinating to me, the idea of like, how do you market a thing? Like this film was a very difficult film to market because it's sort of like we're bought by a horror group in a way, a big genre group. And yet it's like, it's not straight genre. It's not straight one genre. And so it's like, how do you, market that? And just seeing that up close was just really fascinating.
Oh yeah. So how was that? How was that trailer experience? Like, did you guys hire a company, an editor, or like how involved were you?
We actually had our editor do it, and which was such a gift because she really understands the film. And so it was really nice to see that. And we would all kind of give notes and then she would go back and do another pass. And but it didn't take much because it's Lana Wolverton, man. She's like so our new Thelma Schoonmaker. How do you say her last name? Yeah. So she's just a brilliant person, and I'll just like, I need a t-shirt with her name on it. Like, she's so rad. But so that was like, so I was part of the process to a certain degree, but at a certain point the marketing team's doing what the marketing team is going to do. And so we were kind of trying to have conversations with them about it. And then we end up each kind of doing our own thing a little bit too, where I put up some things on social media. You can find like, talking about the film, and I'm going to do some more because I just we put out the film, then we had Christmas, then I got COVID, and I had my whole family got COVID for weeks, and then I actually just tested positive again yesterday, which I think is like a
gosh. Thank you for doing this today. How are you feeling?
I feel fine. I'm just still funny enough. That's why I'm like, I have to have a tea thing going, but I think it's I took the Paxlovid, and sometimes they say you have rebound positives and stuff, so I'm not too worried. It's more just like really annoying. So I'm like, I'm really behind, and I want to put all this other stuff out about the film, so stay attuned to the social media. I'll keep putting all kinds of nerdy tributes about the crew and pick behind the scenes.
I love them, by the way. I love that you share that. It's cool to see the other side. Even though I got to work for Robert, it's still, there's so much I didn't see and didn't know. And like, I was reading scripts too while he was on set doing stuff. There were things I didn't get to see. And I honestly never thought that I was going to go this path and direct something. And we talked about it a little. I was just like, I'll be a writer, I'll be an introvert, and like, or work behind the scenes. I was in creative development for so many years. But it's been cool to do this journey, and it's so cool to see, your anecdotes and your stories and the things that you experience, and like choosing, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Composer. Choosing the music was beautiful, and also the sound design, and choosing the kettle and the tea kettle at the right moments, and the tick-tocking when they were going. That was so great, Allison. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Everything about it was so beautiful.
Thank you. That was a lot of finessing that we did on that tea kettle. That was actually one of the most like complicated moments, was to win to tea kettle. So it was cute. I love it's so rewarding to see anybody putting anything up about the film, not just to spread the word, which is appreciated, but also just hear what people think about it. So some folks have put up like little posts where they have a little tea mug, stuff like that. So that's fun.
I love it.
But
thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, of course.
Share with us, because I know I did ask online, like your favorite movies from last year. You could just do like 5 or.
Oh well, I have like so much. I'm on Letterboxd, and so I actually made a list today because I was like, what are they? I had done like a list that I put a Talkhouse asked me to put it on their website as part of like they were doing lists of lots of them. So I have a list there, but then I watched a whole bunch more movies while I had COVID. So I have more favorites, but my favorite was Barbarian. I loved Barbarian.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. that should have made my list. That was so good too. Yeah. I
So
love how it
good.
went between genres too, like between horror genres.
I
No
love
spoilers.
I love the tone of it was so fun because it really was like it would be so scary and then it would be so funny, which of course is like right next to each other on the spectrum of like emotions, right? And so I thought similarly Glorious I think did a great job of that as well. Had a lot of great like horror.
Glorious?
Great sense of humor. Shudder as well.
Okay.
It's I don't want to spoil by saying anything about it. It's except that almost all of it takes place in a rest stop restroom. And it's pretty much
how glorious.
Yes. And there's a hole. Maybe it's a glory hole, maybe it's not a glory hole. But I love that one so much. Rebecca McKendry directed it, and I think Joshua Hull was the writer. And I just I really like her work, and so that was fun. And then apparently I'm just into the horror and comedy combo. Banshees of Inisherin, which is not a horror film. It's a comedy, but it's a very dark comedy. And I love Martin McDonagh's work, so it was just fun to get a new Martin McDonagh movie. He did In Bruges and 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
Yes,
Get that right? Those long titles, they're like, do I have this? And then After Sun, another first-time female director, After Sun.
After Sun,
and it's about this young girl who's I think she's 11 on a vacation with her dad, who she doesn't live with. So it's them spending time together, and it's sort of a memory. Cool. It's like set in the 90s, and she just I think her name is Charlotte Wells, and she just does this beautiful camera work of the way that she deals with memory that I was just real knocked out by.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So many, a lot of movies about, I saw a lot of great movies this year about what it's like to be a filmmaker and be a writer or be a creative person and like how to navigate that. And The Fabelmans is another one that I think did a really beautiful job of that. I was really surprised, even though of course it's like I'm a Spielberg fan because I have a beating heart, but it was like really to see like how he really got quite dark, but also quite gracious in that story. And I was really impressed by that.
Actually,
I love it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I could just name forever, and that's not that fun.
And I gotta edit all that in. So
keep it all in, every single one.
I always put the footage of the movies we mentioned, but
okay.
There's a pro tip for everybody. On Amazon Prime, you can get Shudder for free for a week, and you can watch The Apology for free on Amazon Prime for 7-week trial. So do that. Watch The Apology.
Yeah, and I think you can also do it just for the Shudder app as well.
Probably, I would assume so.
Yeah, because that's the nice thing. Most streamers have that like week, tempt you kind of period. So yeah, that's a good tip.
And we always tell people at the end of our podcast too that go back to the movies. We want people to go back to the movies,
But this time you can watch it at home.
At this point, there was a chance to watch it at the movies.
But it did play in the theaters.
It did.
But it did play, which is really cool. And I know you watched it too with friends and family, which is like my dream. Like I hope I can do that one day. That's just
you should.
Well, we did the festival.
We did do the festivals, yes.
I know what you mean. There is a little something about like, oh wow, you just buy a ticket. Like there's people in here, I don't know them, and they not,
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
I love going to the movies, and I want to encourage people to go back. There's nothing like watching with an audience and feeling everything with an audience. And like you mentioned, The Fabelmans, and you're right, it was dark and gracious. That's such a great description. And I identified with him personally because my brother and I, we dealt with some things with our mom, who's a beautiful person. We love her, but we were raised by our dad, and so we come from a divorced family, and having that graciousness that he had, that the character had, or that Steve had, I understood. It's weird. Your parents are human. Your parents are human at the end of the day, and I thought he made his mother look beautiful and flawed. it was interesting.
Both of his parents, because I think he did a great job of showing how that marriage disintegrated, understanding why it did, and yet still showing how violent that feels when you're in the middle of it for everybody involved. We went through it a few times. So it's such an intense experience, and it was wild to see him. I'm sure you guys probably felt the same. E.T. was so infamously about his parents' divorce, right? So then to see the full curtain, pulled back.
I know. Yeah.
And then it had like lovely, just weird things, like that fantastic scene in the hallway at the high school with the jock who's like, "Why'd you make me look good?"
Yes.
It was just, he really, Spielberg let his freak fly a little,
he did.
a little bit, and I was happy to see it. Yeah,
I was, and then to see the influences, like to see the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, like the Boy Scout stuff. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but I remember watching him like, oh, that's this, that's that, it was just so touching and beautiful, and like, I think there's a story, and I may be wrong, but I think Steven Spielberg, maybe you guys know, didn't he bury some movies or something, and J.J. Abrams found them and then gave it back to him?
90% of the time, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'll have to look.
Like literally, or don't
news.
Josh can verify later.
No, see, more research.
I feel like I read that he buried videos, and coincidentally J.J. Abrams' family, and when I saw that Steven Spielberg moved in that story, I was like, maybe it's true, that supposedly J.J. Abrams' family moved to that home and J.J. found those videos and gave it back to him, but I could be wrong. I feel like this is true though.
Weirder things have happened, and if that's true, I want to hear everything about that. That's so strange,
right?
It's like, okay, you were burying films, like, how are you so dark, Spielberg?
Okay, so I did some research, and this took a minute, but Kathleen Kennedy tells a story where this gentleman in Arizona moved into Steven Spielberg's old house, and he found some tapes, not in the backyard, in the basement. And he said, "Hey, I think these are Steven Spielberg's films." He tells Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is like, I don't know what this, maybe he just wants money or something. So she asked Spielberg, "Hey, did you live in this home in Arizona?" And he said, "Yes, I did." So now she believes him. So she politely asks him if he can bring the films down. He brings them down. And then it turns out, yes, it was Spielberg's films when he was younger. So it wasn't J.J. Abrams. It was just this guy that moved into his old house. So she told Spielberg, "Hey, there's these two kids, 15, 16-year-olds. They're winning a bunch of awards right now for a movie they made, maybe a short film, but they made a movie together. And you should reach out to them to digitize these films so you can have them forever." So Spielberg says that's a great idea. Those two kids that fixed those old films, they were Super 8 films, the ones that patched them up, was J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves, who are, obviously we all know who they are. They're legendary directors now, and they've all been friends since they were teenagers because they redigitized those films and they fixed it for Spielberg. So that's the story.
Well, I was wondering too, I'm like, well, the dad didn't really want him to make it a career. Maybe he was hiding it from him too, So I was just like, anyway, I thought it was an interesting story. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It was so much fun. I had one more random question though for you. What is the background that you have going on, Glenda? Is that wallpaper? What is happening with all the cool dresses?
Oh, I have to show you. It is wallpaper.
Oh my god! Oh, is it all Star
Wars? It is.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I know that's your great big.
It's Padme.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yes, it's Padme Amidala from Phantom Menace.
Outfits. Oh, wow.
All of her outfits. Yes.
Wow, that's very cool. You'll have to send me a close-up shot. I'm in love with that. That's so.
It looks like breakfast at Tiffany's from here. Then you zoom in and it's Padme.
I love that. I love that kind of thing. Like I love anything where it's like it looks so pretty, and you zoom in and it's like gross monsters or something. Like
exactly. It's funny because it's a hallway that I made into like a dressing room. And I know that when people visit or come by, I'm sure they're wondering what the heck this is.
You gotta have some like creative stuff. Like we have Cthulhu curtains in our
my god, that's so cool.
Room. And it's like everybody always goes, "Whoa, holy curtains!" Like, yeah, it's our house.
That is so badass.
Apparently, the adults we get to choose, right?
That is so amazing. I'm so grateful you joined us. Yes, I'm so grateful, Alison. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And Josh, it was so nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Good luck continuing with the podcast. I look forward to hearing more good nerdery from you both. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.